Hello, this is Mike and welcome to my channel. What you're seeing here is a 2x72 grinder that I built 3 years ago to this month. I got the plans from Housemade. If you Google that, you can find plans. He offers plans that have pre-cut parts, and he also sells just the plans. At the time, I was trying to build it as cheaply as possible, so I cut out all of the metal parts on my vertical bandsaw. Quite labor intensive, so I would suggest just buying the pre-cut parts. Anyway, I'm gonna go over how I like the machine, if I've had any problems with it, things I would change. But to just set the stage correct here, I am not a blacksmith. I've done some of it. Most people are interested in these for knife making, but I just want to be clear that my use for this machine is for general purpose fabrication, which it is very handy for. But to start off, I only have a 1.5 horsepower, 3-phase variable speed motor. And I do regret not putting on a 2 horsepower motor, which is suggested. It does work okay. However, it is easy to stall if you really push the metal into the belt. But that was the motor that I was able to find. You should definitely get a motor that is sealed. That is, excuse me. That is the fans on the back. The internal is completely sealed from the external. The air comes over the outside here, so the dust and debris do not get into it. Some people use DC treadmill motors, but this is an AC 220 volt 3-phase motor, and it's being driven by KBAC or KBAC, a variable frequency drive, which is also completely sealed from the dust. I've not had any trouble with it, but you know, everyone said to go variable speed, and it is handy. However, I find myself with how I use the machine, since I'm not doing like fine detailing on knives, I pretty much run it about at 60%. Now, I don't know exactly what surface feet a minute that is. I could probably figure that out. But if it was fixed at 60, I could have saved myself a lot of money, and it would have worked almost as well as it sits here. I think these variable frequency drives are, at the time, I think they were around $400. They may have been more than that. But I would be plenty happy with a single phase motor that runs at whatever the speed is. And if I get a chance, I'll see if I can figure what the surface feet a minute of the belt is at that speed. The stand, actually I bought the stand on Marketplace, adapted it to the grinder. It's a 1/2 inch thick plate, and the grinder is bolted directly to it. And then I made the stand for the variable frequency drive. And it's bolted directly to it. I really do like the setup of this being right here. Being it's fully sealed, I haven't had any issue with it. I don't foresee any issue with it. But to go over probably the part that I'd like the least is if I was going to do this again, is it's only got a single lock here for the tilt. And it really doesn't hold it that well. If you don't crank it down, it kind of tends to want to move a little bit at times. And this is one of his earlier plans. He may have updated something since then. But It works decent, but I would probably have put a secondary locking mechanism back there. This tracking mechanism is of my own design. There's a video of that. I made it completely of scrap material. I'm gonna see if I can get this belt off here. Hang on a second. All right, so it's completely of scrap material, and it's spring loaded from the back. That goes into, now the spring and this setup is all laid out in the plan. It's just this mechanism that's right here that I made, and this tilts like this, and it can be rotated like that. I do have a metal lathe, so I made all of my wheels here. I've not had any issue with the bearings. I did make this wheel as well. However, unless you really enjoy playing on your lathe, I would just recommend purchasing them. I'm running a 100 grit belt right now. When I have the 36 grit, which I've worn out, I just haven't bought a new one. I do prefer that for heavy stock removal. I made this platen out of some just plain old stainless you can buy at a metal store. It's held up fairly decent. If you really look close, you can see some wear right at the base of the table. Not a lot, but there is some wear there. You can slide the table in and out. You can rotate it in this direction. You can rotate the grinder like this by loosening this. I'll go ahead and put this belt back on. Okay, belt's on. Variable frequency drive's on. Hit start. So I'm running about right here. This gives you an idea of the level of torque it has, a really low percentage. Some things that I would do different. Probably would put some sort of metal tray there, which I could really easily do, like a kitchen pan. I just haven't done that. When you dip the water, your part in the water, it tends to make this all rusty from all the wet filings in the table as well. I don't think there's really any way around that. But if I were to build another one of these for my use, I would save a lot of money by just making it one speed. I do not think that's probably the best solution for knife makers or people who's probably watching this video. But for my use, which is, like I said, general shop use, that speed is more than accurate, and that would have taken off a lot of the cost of the machine. And I could just flip it on and off. I wouldn't have to dial it up and dial it down It's really not necessary for what I'm using it. And I know that's gonna probably spark some pretty aggressive opinions as far as the variable speed part of this, but just please remember how I'm using it. That's not as important. And then the other thing I would change, like I said, I'd go with a 2 horsepower motor, maybe even a 2.5 horsepower motor, but remember, the bigger the motor that you put on it, you gotta make sure your drive is big enough to handle it. I will show you what motor is on here. Like I said, 1.5 horsepower. It's a 56C frame, which bolts, has the flat plate that bolts directly. Kind of see the bolts that hold the motor on right back there. And then just put the extra locking mechanism there. But otherwise, I'm really happy with it. I would still build the same grinder with the small modifications. I would also buy the pre-cut parts, because cutting all this out on the vertical bandsaw, which I would say most people probably don't have a bandsaw of that size, took a lot of time, and the money I saved, I just don't think it was worth it. So I would also probably just buy the a wheel package. But the only accessory that I have for this is a rubber wheel. I don't use this much. Again, I think this would be really good for someone who makes knives. It does work well. I think for profiling and things, you get a little bit smoother finish because you don't have a hard back. But for me, I have another machine I do, a homemade machine that I use a little bit after I grind my piece down on this. I do the finishing on another machine over here, I'll show you. So this is an old dual shaft Craftsman motor off a table saw that I made some extensions for. But I use this flap wheel, and it really makes a very finished, almost a polished finish on metal. So if I didn't have this, I'd probably use that metal or that rubber wheel more, but this gives a really nice finish, and this has been on here for probably 3 years now. But this thing's kind of at the end of its life. It's an open motor. It's not even really supposed to be used for this, but I knew that going into it because I had busted and re-welded or re-brazed this, and I really didn't care. As however long it lasts. Well, it works for me. But anyway, guys, that's my 3-year review of the house-made grinder. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Again, thanks for watching my channel. Please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Take care.